My name is Daniel Scott with UDAYA.com, and this is Average Yoga, a series of tutorials specifically designed for people who don't do yoga yet. Take what you want, leave what you don't, go at your own pace, and learn to build your practice from the ground up. Deepening your back bend practice can be fun, can be very exciting. It can also be, it's worth the time to go slow to move into your back bend practice. I think that's a good place to start. A lot of times we see people who can do back bends and they are automatically flexible to begin with. So if you're working from a place of having tightness in any part of your back, going into those certain targeted areas and opening them up before working a full back bend practice will really help you. So in other videos, we've done some stuff working on lower back, we've done some stuff working on upper back. Today, in this video, we're gonna work on doing full back bends for basics. To begin, let's start with standing work. Now, if you look at me from the profile, when I'm standing stacked, head, shoulders, hips, knees, heels, everything is more or less in one line. Now, if your gaze is looking forward and your tailbone is more or less neutral, which is mean your hips just feel normal, everything stacks pretty easily. And if you start to lift your chin, automatically the chest begins to open, the tailbone starts to sway back, and you can see that there's an opening through the chest and a back bend happening from there. By the same token, if you start to lower the chin, draw the navel in, and tuck the tailbone starts to tuck itself, the chin starts to lower, and the back rounds behind you. So you can use these movements to help support the back bend that you're going to work on, actively and passively. Keeping in mind that the chin and the tailbone, or the head and the tailbone, are just extensions of the spine that we're working with. You don't have to move from the outside in. You want to learn how to move from the inside out. So it's not making the movements here to make the back bend, but making the movements and the engagements from the core to make the spine do what you want. So before we go any deeper in this, it's important to note when doing anything new that relates to your spine, especially if you have pre-existing conditions, don't trust anything that you see on the internet or on a YouTube video. It's really important to talk to people if you have any doubt in your mind that maybe this practice isn't right for you just yet. That being said, if you're really open to trying new things and feel comfortable in your body, this is a great practice for you to work with. So let's bring it back down to the ground. And cat and cow is a very useful experience just to warm the spine up. So whether you have your hands on the ground and you want to cat and cow your spine, it's really just trying to find the rounding. And you see how I'm using my arms to move in to that back bend? As I open the chest, the back begins to bend, and my elbows move back, my tailbone points back, my chin lifts. And then as I take the elbows forward, the chin tucks, the tailbone tucks. Right here would be that cow movement, and this is the cat movement. And just to make reference for actual yoga practice, we got our cow here, we have our cat there. So the first back bend, deepening the back bend practice we're going to work on is this thing called Camel. And yes, I understand a lot of times in yoga class, it's like we're in a menagerie. Everything is all animal related. And, you know, it's an interesting thing to think about the animals that we bring into our mind as we practice. So as you move into this back bend, think about, do you really feel like a camel? And if so, how? Now, you see what I did right here? I rolled up the yoga mat. I am, I guess we'll say, I'm a little bit of a baby when it comes to my knees on hard ground, and especially when I'm starting to ground down through my knees. I like to pad up because it feels really good. So you might feel the same way. Padding up in the front of your mat gives your knees a little comfortable reception. As you start to extend weight down through the knees, you're going to feel a lot better than pushing your knees onto a hard ground. Now, if you look back at my feet back here, you can do this with your feet flat, but you might just try tucking the toes. And when you tuck the toes, you want to have the heel directly above the toes. Try not to have the heels fall out or fall in. Now, before we do anything here, again, start working on the warming up. That navel's drawing in so much, the spine rounds behind you. And you can even see I'm making this sort of chicken wing, elbow rounding situation. As I do that, my tailbone goes back. I feel the thighs activate, which is really cool. Core is engaging, the tailbone is pointing down behind the kneecaps, and I'm rounding, my chin is tucking. And then I come back to stacking, and then instead of lifting the chin, what I want to do is open the chest, and maybe I'll even draw my shoulder blades together to make that happen. And then I can start moving my hips forward, and then I can lift the chin, or at least have this movement, lift the chin, and I become a bit more active in this chest opener, back bending. Come back to center. Note that it's very easy to collapse into the lower back because that's where there's a tendency to try to push the hips forward, but really feel that you're trying to open up from the upper spine as well. So again, as the shoulders begin to pull back, the heart moves forward, then the chin can start to lift, but let the chest open to lift the gaze. And if your hips are still stacked over your knees, even better. Let the navel draw in, let the ribs begin to open up like the chin did, and as the heart moves forward and the hips move forward slightly, the weight's moving backwards. And then come back to neutral, and then round it out. Maybe even interlace the fingers, push the palms forward, tuck the chin. Now, before you start doing anything deeper with your hands on your hips, warming up this way, you're starting to train the muscles to move the bones to make this movement happen. So let's take our hands to our back and see if we can deepen this here. Now, the position I'm going to have on my sacrum, which is the flat bone at the bottom of the spine, it's like making a little butterfly situation. Thumbs up, palms in, fingers out. Suiting up here, suiting up here. The idea is if you can't get the elbows pointing back behind you, try your best to do that. And if the fingers out doesn't work, fingers down, thumbs out, palms in might make that a bit more comfortable for you. So what you want to do is inhale, shoulders to the ears. Exhale, shoulders down the spine. Feel the navel draw in. Lower the chin a bit so the gaze drops. And then from here, inhale, breathe into the chest so the chest moves towards the chin. Feel the hips start to track forward. Navel draws in and up. Elbows hug in. Shoulders to the ears, shoulders down the spine. And let the opening of the chest lift the gaze. Breath in, breath out. Try not to hold the weight here. Now, if you can feel the tailbone starting to move towards the knees or even past the knees energetically, fantastic. And by move past them, I mean the tailbone's pointing a laser beam to the backs of your kneecaps. Breath in, breath out. The last thing you need to do here is drop your head. In fact, if you do, it might feel really uncomfortable. So keep a little activation in the back of your neck so that you don't have any hot dog packs behind the back of your hairline. Try to keep the back of the neck long. When it's time to come out, drop the chin to the chest, draw the navel in, and use that to stack the shoulders over the hips. And if you want a nice counter pose, you can interlace those fingers, extend the arms forward, and even sit back onto the heels, round through the spine. Coming back to neutral. Beginning this practice, a lot of times you feel it everywhere else but the back. You feel it in the thighs, you feel it on the hips, you feel it in the neck, you feel it in the shoulders, you feel it on the chest. If you're in your body and you feel super tight, don't go for the depth of this back bend. Think about opening up all the muscles around it in order to get to where you need to go. So you can just go back to those raised cat and cows, small movements from side to side to warm it up, and then try again. So remember, hands on the sacrum, elbows in, chin down to begin, shoulders up to the ears, shoulders down the spine on that first breath, and just allow yourself to slowly melt into this. This isn't about how far. It's about how good, as in how good does it feel? And if it feels terrible, don't go past where you need to be. Coming back to neutral, dropping the tailbone, extending the arms. Holy moly, this feels either really good or really need to work on it more. So take your time with this one. This is a very active one. If you're in class and the teacher tells you to go to wheel, which is the hands on your back and trying to do a full wheel, don't worry about that. If this is your first back bend, you can always come to Camel or ask for variations. Speaking of which, variations, let's talk about variations. I got variations out the wazoo for you. Now, if you're like me, which is very possible, you might be lazy, a little bit lazy in your practice, and that's okay. For me, back bends used to be a nice, cool decoration to show off how strong and how open I was, but really I ended up hurting myself over time. And so now I'm very supportive whenever I go into a back bend practice. So the brick is your friend. For this next pose, it's called bridge pose. It's one of my favorite ones. In the beginning, you might think it's kind of easy. Personally, I think it's exactly what I want all the time. Knees bent, feet flat on the ground, heels as close to the sit bones as possible. Your thighs can be parallel, and you're more than welcome to hug a brick there to have some internal rotation. Also, another brick is really what you're going to want to have later on. Now, by squeezing this brick in here, head on the ground, you can even have little robot arms, elbows next to the ribs and hips, fingers pointing up. Navel's going to draw in so much that the tailbone begins to lift. So you're flattening your lower back against the ground, but you're keeping a little arch behind the neck. Now from here, this core engages so much by drawing down into the ground that the tailbone begins to lift. And if you keep doing that so much, you can push weight into the feet, and the tailbone lifts, and one vertebrae at a time, you start coming up like a zipper unzipping from the mat. You can even push into the elbows to make this happen, to support at first, but use the core to drive this movement. On the way back down, the navel's drawing in, the ribs start to lower down, the top of the belly, the middle of the belly through the belly button, and then finally the tailbone's the last thing to go. So do this a few times, using energy through the feet, through the elbows, engaging through the core, and letting the muscles drive this movement. What you're trying to work on is a full articulation of the spine, like a zipper, zipping and unzipping back and forth to the mat. Now, after time, if you see that the brick hasn't fallen out yet, if you feel like your legs start to fall out, having a brick there is a really great way to remind yourself, oh, I need a little bit of internal engagement to find that lift. Take that second brick, and you can do it any height that you want. You can shove it under the sacrum. Now, this is the highest one. If you have a very open back, this might be nice. But in the beginning, it might simply be the flattest position that you can find. Keep the hips lifted just above the ribs. And even right here, you take the brick out, let the knees fall onto the feet wide. This is a very gentle and supported, relaxed back bend. Over time, you can start working on stacking the brick a little bit higher and a little bit higher until you find that you have a supported back bend that gives you all the benefits of doing the work without actually having to do the work. So if you're in a position where you feel you need to open the back over time, this is a great way to start working with that. And then from here, even if you have the elbows down, you can do that same exercise. Navel draws in so much, pushing weight into the feet, the tailbone lifts. It gives you a little bit of extra oomph at the top of the back bend, and then exhale, you can lower the sacrum back. One more time as you lift it up, you can even take your thumbs and poke yourself in the butt. If you feel like your butt cheek is gripping, try to do the same movement without doing that. That's a little homework for you guys to play with over time. Now, is this the end-all, be-all of your yoga practice? Is this all you're going to do with your back bends? Most likely not. But this is a great place to start, especially if you have any hesitation, tightness, or inability to connect with what's going on in your back from your ribs down. So take this time, go slow, and let me know how it works for you. So, how'd all that land for you? Hopefully, it sparked a fire. And if you're looking to fan the flame, head over to UDAYA.com and enter the promo code AVERAGE Joga. You're going to have access to a lot more classes from myself and a host of amazing teachers from around the world of all shapes, styles, and colors. By all means, let this serve as a great foundation to build a home practice on that you can have for the rest of your life. Enjoy, enjoy.